So, hello, dear students. So, last time we analyzed some speech patterns and did some exercises. So, today we'll work on the text A Day's Wait by Ernest Hemingway. So, Ernest Hemingway is the author of the book that we are going to read. So he lived a life full of adventure. He was one of the group of writers called the Lost Generation. These writers rejected what they saw as an American focus on acquiring many possessions. Along with being one of America's most famous writers, Hemingway was a fisherman, a hunter, and a fan of bullfighting. He participated in both world wars. Many of his works are based on his experiences in Europe and Cuba. So, like much of Hemingway's writings, A Day's Wait is based on actual events in Hemingway's life. While Hemingway was living in France, his son came down with a high fever and reacted similarly to the boy in the story you will read and listen. So before listening to the audio, let's watch some short bio of Ernest Hemingway.
Ernest Hemingway was one of the most important writers of the 20th century.
He revolutionized the idea of what an American author was, and he was a bigger celebrity in his day and age than we could probably conceive of now. He was the Lady Gaga of his era.
Ernest Miller Hemingway was born in Oak Park, Illinois on July 21st, 1899.
As a young man, Hemingway worked on his school newspaper, and then on graduation, instead of going to college, he went directly to work on newspapers in Kansas City. That background in journalism had a lot to do with his later literary style.
Ernest Hemingway's writing style was significant because he was so brief and seemingly straightforward. Whereas other writers were writing very long sentences, Hemingway came in and stamped on them with his short little sentences, like army boots.
During World War I, Hemingway served as an ambulance driver and then moved to Paris, where he wrote his first novel, The Sun Also Rises, in 1926.
Paris was this amazing confluence of literary talent where you had Hemingway, James Joyce, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Gertrude Stein, T.S. Eliot, and Hemingway immediately impressed all of them, especially Fitzgerald, who brought Hemingway's manuscript, The Sun Also Rises, to his publisher, Charles Scribner. If it hadn't been for Fitzgerald, Hemingway might not be a household name now.
Hemingway's 1929 second novel, A Farewell to Arms, was based on his World War I experiences and was a big success. His personal life, however, was often stormy.
Hemingway had this pathological thing where as soon as he married one woman, he fell in love with another one, usually a much younger one. And this happened over and over.
Ernest Hemingway was married 4 times. With his first wife, Hadley, they had a son, John. With his second wife, Pauline, he had 2 sons, Patrick and Gregory. He was then married to the journalist Martha Gellhorn, and then finally to Mary Welsh.
Hemingway continued to live up to his reputation as a fearless physical writer, as he served as a newspaper war correspondent during the Spanish Civil War and World War II.
In 1951, Ernest Hemingway won the Pulitzer Prize for The Old Man and the Sea.
Hemingway was further honored 3 years later with a Nobel Prize in Literature.
In Ernest Hemingway's later life, he fought depression, anxiety, probably mental illness.
Hemingway suffered from alcoholism, suffered from an ongoing battle with inner demons in his life.
It started to take an intense mental toll. He would have beer and gin for breakfast, and after a while he was no longer a functional alcoholic. His ability to write was gone, and he felt that that was his essence as a human being. That was his point for being on Earth.
Hemingway committed suicide when finally he found that all the virtues that he most valued, self-control and productivity, had come to an end. It was better to go out than simply to flounder on.
Ernest Hemingway died on July 2nd, 1961.
Hemingway's greatest work may have been his life, the life that he lived. He took being a writer from being someone who just sat in a room to someone who not just gobbled up life, but made a show of it.
So this was the video about Ernest Hemingway's life, and let's move to the text itself. The text is called A Day's Wait. So this text is about this boy who was waiting for his death for the whole day. So now you will read and listen to the text, and after listening you will be given some exercises.
A Day's Wait. He came into the room to shut the windows while we were still in bed, and I saw he looked ill. He was shivering, his face was white, and he walked slowly as though it ached to move. "What's the matter, Schatz?" "I've got a headache." "You better go back to bed." "No, I'm all right." "You go to bed. I'll see you when I'm dressed." But when I came downstairs, he was dressed, sitting by the fire, looking a very sick and miserable boy of 9 years. When I put my hand on his forehead, I knew he had a fever. "You go up to bed," I said. "You're sick." "I'm all right," he said. When the doctor came, he took the boy's temperature. "What is it?" I asked him. 102. Downstairs, the doctor left 3 different medicines in different colored capsules with instructions for giving them. One was to bring down the fever, another a purgative, the third to overcome an acid condition. "The germs of influenza can only exist in an acid condition," he explained. He seemed to know all about influenza and said there was nothing to worry about if the fever did not go above 104 degrees. This was a light epidemic of flu, and there was no danger if you avoided pneumonia. Back in the room, I wrote the boy's temperature down and made a note of the time to give the various capsules. "Do you want me to read to you?" "All right, if you want to," said the boy. His face was very white, and there were dark areas under his eyes. He lay still in the bed and seemed very detached from what was going on. I read aloud from Howard Pyle's Book of Pirates, but I could see he was not following what I was reading. "How do you feel, Schatz?" I asked him. "Just the same, so far," he said. I sat at the foot of the bed and read to myself while I waited for it to be time to give another capsule. It would have been natural for him to go to sleep, but when I looked up, he was looking at the foot of the bed, looking very strangely. "Why don't you try to go to sleep? I'll wake you up for the medicine." "I'd rather stay awake." After a while, he said to me, "You don't have to stay in here with me, Papa, if it bothers you." "Doesn't bother me." "No, I mean, you don't have to stay if it's going to bother you." I thought perhaps he was a little light-headed, and after giving him the prescribed capsules at 11 o'clock, I went out for a while. It was a bright, cold day, the ground covered with a sleet that had frozen, so that it seemed as if all the bare trees, the bushes, the cut brush, and all the grass in the bare ground had been varnished with ice. I took the young Irish setter for a little walk up the road and along a frozen creek, but it was difficult to At the house, they said the boy had refused to let anyone come into the room. "You can't come in," he said. "You mustn't get what I have." I went up to him and found him in exactly the position I had left him, white-faced, but with the tops of his cheeks flushed by the fever, staring still as he had stared at the foot of the bed. I took his temperature. "What is it?" "Something like 100, I said. It was 102 4/10. "It was 102, he said. "Who said so?" "The doctor." "Your temperature is all right," I said. "It's nothing to worry about." "I don't worry," he said, "but I can't keep from thinking." "Don't think," I said. "Just take it easy." "I'm taking it easy," he said, and looked straight ahead. He was evidently holding tight onto himself about something. "Take this with water." "Do you think it will do any good?" "Of course it will." I sat down and opened the pirate book and commenced to read, but I could see he was not following, so I stopped.
About what time do you think I'm going to die? He asked. What? About how long will it be before I die? You aren't going to die. What's the matter with you? Yes, I am. I heard him say 102. People don't die with a fever of 102. That's a silly way to talk. I know they do. At school in France, the boys told me you can't live with 44 degrees. I've got 102. He had been waiting to die all day, ever since 9 o'clock in the morning. You poor shots, I said. Poor old shots. It's like miles and kilometers. You aren't going to die. That's a different thermometer. On that thermometer, 37 is normal. On this kind, it's 98. Are you sure? Absolutely, I said. It's like miles and kilometers. You know, like how many kilometers we make when we do 70 miles in the car? Oh, he said. But his gaze at the foot of the bed relaxed slowly. The holdover himself relaxed too, finally. And the next day it was very slack. And he cried very easily at little things that were of no importance.
Okay, and here I have some questions. First is a recall. Why does the boy think he's going to die? So you should answer this question, and you should summarize how does the story end, and you have to analyze characterization. In what ways does the boy show concern for others? Does he reveal his concern through thoughts, words, or actions? You can give some examples here. And you may draw your conclusions. Why does the boy cry so much the next day? So reflect on this question and write your ideas and make judgments. Do you think the boy's actions show bravery? Why or why not? So these questions will be your first exercise to be done. And the next exercise will be from the book. Exercise 5. Here there are some questions on the text. So page 57, on page 57. So it will be your second task, second exercise to be done and sent to Google Classroom. So I will create new section in Google Classroom where you should send these 2 tasks. So, and that is all for today, and we'll see you next class, at the next class. Goodbye.